Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
I have a quick question, ladies and gentlemen, just a little quickie here. You remember when a president and a secretary of state told a bunch of Gold Star families that the death of their loved ones was because of an internet video? I do. You remember that lie, ladies and gentlemen?
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday!
Because I sure as heck do. Great to have you folks. Here we are, as mentioned yesterday, back home in the EIB Southern Command for Open Line Friday, which means that callers can discuss whatever the hell you want to talk about. Feel free, have at it. Doesn't have to be politics, doesn't have to be... And if you want to talk about... Have you seen this? Playboy magazine? You haven't seen this? I thought they were going to stop publishing pictures after Hef went to the great condom in the sky, but I guess not. Their playmate this month is a guy, a transgender guy. I mean, it's just... If you want to talk about things like that, I'm also told that Harvey Weinstein's not doing great at sex addict rehab. Not getting into the program. Takes his cell phone in there, is berating people, walking out. The problem is that Harvey's not a sex addict. He's a predator and a bully. And there's no rehab for that. Anyway, folks, telephone number is 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program, and the email address lrushbo@eibnet.com. I guess the NFL outreach to our communities and our issues didn't matter much. Thursday night football ratings down. Last night, preliminary overnight metered markets. The Raiders, it was a close game, apparently. I didn't see it. I didn't watch it. But the Kansas City Chiefs lost 31-30 on a last-minute walk-off touchdown pass. The drive-bys are calling it a walk-off touchdown pass. 31 to, it sounds like it was a good game, but I didn't see it, and not as many people as used to saw it, because the ratings continue to plunge. Let me ask you another question here, folks. It's a pop quiz. Which candidate in the 2016 presidential election took millions of dollars from Russia? The answer is Hillary Clinton. The fact that the Hill.com provides the correct answer to that question is astounding. But the fact that Hillary Clinton isn't under intense scrutiny by a special counsel is equally astounding, and it's deeply troubling. There's a great column today in the Wall Street Journal by Kimberly Strassel, and it may have run yesterday. Let me check the... it ran yesterday. And it's all about the fusion collusion, the controversy over fusion GPS, and the fact that the Democrat Party is going out of its way to protect them. When that's the real collusion, that's the real, perhaps, criminal activity that went on in the 2016 presidential race. None of it involving Trump. This all involves the Democrats. Fusion GPS, they wrote the Trump dossier, and the Democrats are doing everything they can to shield these people from having to testify before Congress. Have you also seen, I'm just setting a table here, folks, to give you an idea of what's on tap today. Have you seen where President Trump and Vice President Pence have released a petition demanding that all players and fans stand for the national anthem? And they've emailed supporters asking for signatures. They did this yesterday. Now, this is according to the GOP's website, but I saw it independently of that. The president has asked for a list of supporters who stand for the national anthem. Add your name below to show your patriotism and support. The petition reads, before asking for your name, your email, and your zip code. Think back to what you've been hearing all years about what Trump was going to be a dictator. that Trump was going to be another Hitler or Mussolini. I mean, did Hitler do online petitions? Did Mussolini do online petitions? Did either of those guys leave it up to public opinion when any of their agenda items came up? I don't believe so. And the drive-bys can't believe it. Trump won't let this go. Oh, and there's this. The CEO of the San Francisco 49ers, his name is Jed York. And he is the son of John York and Denise DeBartolo York. Denise DeBartolo is the sister of Eddie DeBartolo, the former owner of the 49ers back when they had their Super Bowl dynasty. And he was perhaps the most popular owner in all of the NFL during his stewardship. And he was run out of the league because he had some kind of collusion with the governor of Louisiana, Edwin Edwards, over gambling or some such thing. I don't remember the specifics. But the father, Edward DeBartolo Sr. from Youngstown, Ohio, was the patriarch of the family. Anyway, the daughter, Denise DeBartolo, and her husband, John York, got the team. Now their son is running it, and Jed York is the guy. The 49ers is a team that Kaepernick played for. The 49ers is a team that Kaepernick told to go pound sand in March. They offered him a $14 million contract, and Kaepernick walked out on it for whatever reason, thinking he could do better, or he was still in the protest frame of mind. But the guy that employed Kaepernick and the guy that says great things about Kaepernick has answered the media charge that there is no collusion keeping, quote-unquote, Colin out of the NFL. And, of course, the sports drive-bys are not happy about this because they want there to be collusion between the owners to keep poor Colin Kaepernick out of the league. Campus Reform, I love these guys. These Campus Reform, they're actually a group of young entrepreneurs, have their website, Campus Reform. They do some great work, and they remind me of me back when this program was beginning. And here's what they did. This is so useful. This is such a teachable moment. They took a film crew to a major college campus, George Washington University in Washington, and they grabbed random students, and they gave them details of Donald Trump's tax plan, but they didn't tell the students it was Trump's tax plan. They told the students it was Bernie Sanders' tax plan. And they went through the details, reducing the corporate rate down to 25%. All of the things in the Trump tax plan that are pro-consumer. And all of these kids, when they thought they were answering questions about Bernie's tax plan, loved it. They supported it. They adored it. It's obvious they don't know what they think they know. They don't know what they're talking about. It's obvious these students are not educated. It is obvious that they are regurgitating phrases that they hear from friends and on social media in classrooms, because their reaction to it was just, well, it was clear to me that even while they were agreeing with it, they hadn't thought about it, and they didn't really know what they were agreeing with. Just because it was Bernie Sanders' tax plan, it was great, and they were trying to sound educated, informed, and all that, and it's clear they weren't. At the end of the video, it only takes about 3.5 minutes to watch it, Campus Reform dude tells them all that, oh, I'm sorry, this is not Bernie Sanders' tax plan, it's Donald Trump's. And all of these students are shocked into stunned silence and cannot believe it. And then they start muttering, well, I don't know, maybe, well, could be Trump's not that bad, I don't know. Really? No. Are you kidding me? No. But most of them are just blank staring at the guy from Campus Reform. And then with a couple of them, and if you really, really know how to look, a couple of them do seem to indicate that they might be frustrated they were lied to by the Campus Reform guy. not by the people telling them that Trump's tax plan is horrible, because that's what they've been told. So it's a great reminder that, and the college students are a microcosm. I don't think this phenomenon is exclusive to them. People's partisan biases determine what they think and believe and what they think is honest and false, the true and false, rather than actually applying their own mind to it. I have a friend. This is interesting. Just reminded myself of this. I have a friend who's taking her son on a tour of major colleges around the country because he's not crazy about going to college. And, of course, as the parent, she thinks that he should. And I told her what I think the problem is. Your kid is brilliant, and his brain needs to be stimulated. If somebody's just going to preach and do lectures and so forth, whoever, they're not going to reach your son. Your son is, and the kid is really, he's 19 or 18, and he's brilliant. And so she took him, I think, a couple of days ago to Hillsdale College in Wisconsin, and they let him sit in on two classes, on a politics class and a political history class. And she told me he was just lit up. He just loved it. Even as a guest student sitting in it, he felt fully engaged because he said, this is the first classroom I've been in where I've actually been made to think, where I've actually been encouraged to think rather than just absorb. And he was jazzed about it. This is what's missing in so much of education. This kid's brain needs to be stimulated. It's a gold mine waiting to be tapped. And apparently these two classes at Hillsdale did the trick. I don't know what other universities are on the tour and how many of them remain and where they've gone up till now, but that stood out. Now, Hillsdale obviously is a good choice, but I think it when you look at these, if you look at that video, and we'll put the link to it up at rushlimbaugh.com in mere moments, you'll be able to link to it. I know we're talking about teenagers and low 20s, but these students that Campus Reform found, they haven't yet obviously found their stride. They're not that informed, but they think they are, obviously. And it struck me when I watched this, just how I don't know. I'm having a tough time describing what I'm not. It's not about being stupid or dumb or any of that. It just seems like they're in the learning mode. They already know it all, and that's not untypical, I know, of people that age. But it just makes me think. I don't think at many universities today, in undergrad programs, there's a whole lot of brain stimulation going on. There's a lot of preaching to, and students expected to absorb, but not challenge and not think about and what they're hearing. And that's what I saw when I watched this video. They loved Trump's tax plan, except they thought it was Bernie Sanders. If you had half a brain, if you listened to the details of the tax plan, one of these students should have known, that's not Bernie's tax plan. I know Bernie's tax plan, and Bernie's not cutting anybody's taxes. What are you trying to tell me? Bernie Sanders wants to cut the corporate rate to 25, but they just ate it all up. Whatever this guy told them Bernie's tax plan was, they absorbed it and loved it, even though it goes against everything they claim to believe. But since it was Bernie's, it was cool. And then when they found out it was Trump's, they were stumped. They didn't know what to think. Now, next, I'm going to take a break here. When we come back, I want to go through the audio sound bites. This happened yesterday, and because it wasn't, it happened after the program yesterday. The Chief of Staff, John Kelly, going to the press room in the White House and making his statement in the middle of this controversy over whether or not Trump knows what to say and says the right things when he calls the families of military people killed in action. This is just, you have to hear this. And if you have already heard it, please indulge me. because I've only seen excerpts of it. We've got pretty much the gist of it here. The reaction to this, though, on CNN, this is among the worst. It's tough to characterize how just downright mean and hateful in a uniform way everybody who commented on General Kelly's remarks yesterday is. Mean-spirited, hateful, angry. And it's yet another vivid lesson on how the Democrat Party and the media is colluding to just openly lie about Donald Trump. Remember yesterday, went through the notion they've failed here with Russia. Well, we can't say they failed because the Mueller team is still eagerly seeking a crime, and these are the kinds of people that can make one up. There will be a crime before these people finish. Even though there isn't one, there will be one. They will find one or they will create one. They will make one up. But so far, nothing on Russia. So the Democrats have shifted focus and the media have shifted focus, and now it's all on Trump is unfit. Back to that. That was what Hillary originally began with, you recall. In her campaign, Trump is unfit for this office. He simply is not suited. This man does not have the intelligence, the emotion, the empathy. This man does not have the qualifications. And that was her whole campaign. And it's interesting, they've circled back to that now after everything else that they've tried to get rid of Trump and to ruin his numbers and to separate him from his supporters. After all of that's failed, they're now beginning to recycle what they started with. But the way CNN and others in the drive-by media went after General Kelly yesterday, I'm convinced like the NFL doesn't know the hole they're digging for themselves. These people don't either, and they never will learn it. They're too obstinate and stubborn and arrogant. So we'll get started with that when we get back. I have another pop quiz question. You think Donald Trump would be impeached if he had received millions of dollars from Putin front groups, if he had given away uranium, if he'd shut up a whistleblowing FBI agent, and if he had colluded with Republican opposition research companies? You think Trump would be? They would already have had him impeached. That's exactly what has happened with the Democrats and Hillary and Fusion GPS. And they're trying to cover that up, including the Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee. Now, before setting up General Kelly, I want to go back. And this is a montage of what the Obama administration told Gold Star families after Benghazi.
I don't care how offensive this video was, and it was terribly offensive, and we should shun it.
This video is disgusting and reprehensible. It appears to have a deeply cynical purpose to denigrate a great religion and to provoke rage.
Let's be clear. These protests were in reaction to a video that had spread to the region.
You had a video that was released by somebody who lives here, sort of a shadowy character, who is an extremely offensive video.
The unrest we've seen has been in reaction to a video.
It was a crude and disgusting video, sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world.
It was a spontaneous, not a premeditated response, a direct result of a heinous and offensive video.
I know there are some who ask, why don't we just ban such a video? And the answer is enshrined in our laws. Our Constitution protects the right to practice free speech.
That was a coordinated effort to lie, explaining the death of 4 Americans in Benghazi on a video. And Susan Rice, it was a spontaneous, not premeditated response. No, it was a premeditated terrorist attack, and the video had nothing to do with it. You want to talk about lying to Gold Star families? Open Line Friday. El Rushbo executing assigned host duties flawlessly, 0 mistakes. Also keep in mind, beyond the video lies to the American public, the montage we just played for Susan Rice was on 5 Sunday morning TV shows in one day. Lying about the terror attack in Benghazi was spontaneous because of this horrible video. You had Obama, you had Hillary, that was Jay Carney twice in that montage. Lying, Hillary and Obama produced a TV commercial that ran in Pakistan promoting this lie. But it was not just them, not just the American people. Hillary and Obama lied to the parents of the men killed in Benghazi right in front of their coffins. Lied to their faces about the reason for their deaths. Totally made it up. Hillary lied to both Pat Smith and Charles Woods. Hillary stared right at this mother who was mourning as her son lay in a casket just feet away at Andrews Air Force Base, Joint Base Andrews, September of 2012. And Smith later told the Republican National Convention, when I saw Hillary Clinton at Sean's coffin ceremony just days later, she looked me squarely in the eye and told me a video was responsible. Charles Woods, another father, wrote in his journal that same day, I gave Hillary a hug and shook her hand, and she said we're going to have the filmmaker arrested who was responsible for the death of his son. So with that as background, we now transition to the latest effort to demean, impugn, and lie about Donald Trump, claiming he's unfit, claiming he's too coarse, he's too big a pig, he doesn't know how to have empathy, he doesn't have sympathy, he doesn't care for these people, he doesn't know what to say because he doesn't care that people died for the country, so he calls these families up and he insults them, and this is what they're lying about, these same people. And the media hordes that supported him. It got so out of control that the chief of staff, General John Kelly, went to the press room and spoke about this controversy surrounding Trump's call to the widow of a soldier killed in action and what happens in this situation. And we have a number of sound bites from General Kelly, and here we go. This is the first.
Most Americans don't know what happens when we lose one of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, or Coast Guardsmen in combat. So let me tell you what happens. Their buddies wrap them up in whatever passes as a shroud, puts them on a helicopter as a routine, and sends them home. Their first stop along the way is when they're packed in ice, typically at the airhead, and then they're flown to usually Europe, where they're then packed in ice again and flown to Dover Air Force Base, where Dover takes care of the remains and bombs them, meticulously dresses them in their uniform with the medals that they've earned, the emblems of their service, and then puts them on another airplane linked up with a casualty officer escort that takes them home.
Now, it may be brutal to some to listen to this, but, you know, it strikes me that we have we have an adult on Trump's staff here who's willing to take the time to explain to people what actually happens here rather than just react with raw emotion, rooted in raw emotion, hatred and disgust for Trump. There's no curiosity. The very people claiming Trump has no empathy, the very people claiming that Trump doesn't care, very people claiming that Trump is a brutish, predatory pig, haven't the slightest idea what they are talking about. And they haven't the slightest bit of curiosity to learn what they're talking about. General Kelly continued.
Hours after my son was killed, his friends were calling us from Afghanistan, telling us what a great guy he was. Those are the only phone calls that really matter. If you elect to call a family like this, it is about the most difficult thing you could imagine. There's no perfect way to make that phone call. When I took this job and talked to President Trump about how to do it, my first recommendation was he not do it, because it's not the phone call that parents, family members are looking forward to. It's nice to do, in my opinion, in any event. He asked me about previous presidents, and I said I can tell you that President Obama, who was my commander-in-chief when I was on active duty, did not call my family.
Well, there you go. Now, I don't know what you've heard about this, but when this kerfuffle began and Trump was being hit from all sides, as always, he brought in General Kelly, and he mentioned that very point. that Obama didn't take the time to call General Kelly or his family. Then we got stories about how Kelly was outraged and shamed and sorry that Trump had chosen to politicize the death of his son. Well, I guess that wasn't true either, because here's Kelly setting the record straight. Obama didn't call him. The drive-bys and everybody involved wanted to make it look like Trump had lied, because that's what they always try to make it look like. So they sit there shocked and devastated by what they've heard, but they get over it pretty quickly, because none of this is going to shape in any way their take on this event. Hearing the truth, hearing the details, does not deter the forces arrayed against Donald Trump on this. And another salient point in that bite is General Kelly also confirming that he told President Trump not to do it. It's a tough call. It's difficult to know what to say. We have people whose job it is to inform the parents. Do you know what that policy is, by the way? You've seen it portrayed in movies where a mother or father or family is happily engaged in getting ready for the day, and there's a knock on the door. And the mother or father answers the door, and it's two uniformed military personnel. It's known, of course, that the family has a son or daughter fighting overseas, and the sight of the two uniformed military personnel is all they need to know. The only time they show up is when your son or daughter has died. Well, what actually happens in that circumstance is that it's pretty close the way it's portrayed. The one thing I didn't know is that the policy is for the uniformed military personnel who are going to convey the information to the family show up before dawn. And they park outside the home and they wait until very first light, before people may even be up. And at first light, they approach the front door and knock on it. And the theory being that this needs to be the first thing the family hears in their day, as opposed to at 10 o'clock when people are gone, the whole family not there, as opposed to later that night. It's best to do this at the beginning of the day. And there is a studied policy for this based on learned experience with all this. And General Kelly told Trump, don't do it. It's a difficult thing to do, and not expecting to hear from you. So don't. And Trump told Kelly he wanted to do it, and did it. And here's Kelly explaining that.
I think he very bravely does make those calls. So he called 4 people the other day and expressed his condolences in the best way that he could. And he said to me, what do I say? I said to him, sir, there's nothing you can do to lighten the burden on these families. But let me tell you what I tell them. Let me tell you what my best friend, Joe Dunford, told me, because he was my casualty officer. He said, Kel, he was doing exactly what he wanted to do when he was killed. He knew what he was getting into by joining that 1%. He knew what the possibilities were, because we're at war. And when he died, in the 4 cases we're talking about in Niger, my son's case in Afghanistan, when he died, he was surrounded by the best men on this earth, his friends. That's what the president tried to say to 4 families the other day.
Okay, so there's Kelly explaining what he told Trump that he says. He said that Trump asked him what to say. Well, when I first heard, by the way, when this really wacko Democrat congressman from down here in Florida, I mean, she's a piece of work. She's out there now claiming, my kids are going to recognize me as a rock star. She thinks she's really popular now because the White House is talking about her. I wonder how the family that she was driving around with and listening to this phone call, wonder what this family now thinks of this congresswoman who's running around like she's been made a big star out of this, as though this whole event was nothing more than something she could use to elevate her political standing. I mean, you talk about sick. It's always on the exact opposite side of things that the drive-bys tell us about. Anyway, when I heard Trump say, when I heard it reported that Trump told the family that this is what he signed up for, I was not offended. It didn't bother me at all. My reaction, why is everybody blowing a gasket over that? Well, Mr. Limbaugh is very insensitive. This is what he signed up for. He knew it. No. That's not what it means. And everybody with just a shred of rationality knows. And now everybody knows that simply Trump used in his own words what General Kelly had told him he says. He said Kelly was doing exactly what he wanted to do when he was killed. Trump had his own way of verbalizing that. But the fact that they harped on this, now lying about the fact that Trump didn't even call somebody and then promised to send somebody $25,000 and Trump didn't send the money when he did send the money. The check was sent. It just every day, these people are on the assault. And here's General Kelly, who perhaps has more moral authority on this subject than anybody in that administration, and they're now trying to castigate and ruin him over this by claiming he's taken one for the team. That he doesn't really believe all this stupid stuff he's saying. He's just out there protecting his boss, is what they said at CNN yesterday. We have a couple of more here from General Kelly. I want you to hear them. We'll be back and get to them right after this. Open Line Friday, Rush Limbaugh on the radio, riveting the nation with vocal vibrations, rhetoric, and resonance at 800-282-2882. Just a couple more here from General Kelly, and I just checked the phone call roster. We've got some excellent calls based on the subjects they want to discuss coming up. So if you're on hold, I beg you, stay there. We'll get to you quickly. Here's just two more. Here's the next. These next two bites from General Kelly are especially hard-hitting. And
I was stunned when I came to work yesterday morning and brokenhearted at what I saw a member of Congress doing. A member of Congress who listened in on a phone call from the President of the United States to a young wife, and in his way tried to express that opinion that he's a brave man, a fallen hero. He knew what he was getting himself into because he enlisted. There's no reason to enlist. He enlisted. And he was where he wanted to be, exactly where he wanted to be, with exactly the people he wanted to be with when his life was taken. That was the message. It stuns me that a member of Congress would have listened in on that conversation. Absolutely stuns me. And I thought at least that was sacred. You know, when I was a kid growing up, a lot of things were sacred in our country. Women were sacred and looked upon with great honor. That's obviously not the case anymore, as we see from recent cases. Life, the dignity of life, is sacred. That's gone. Religion, that seems to be gone as well. Gold Star families, I think that left in the convention over the summer. I just thought the selfless devotion that brings a man or woman to die on the battlefield, I just thought that might be sacred.
Wow! That is absolutely bullseye. That is right on the money. Everything he said there, women were sacred, looked upon with great honor. Not the case anymore. Religion, dignity of life, Gold Star families. He's talking about the Democrat convention. He's talking about how the Democrats have politicized everything here. Now, the media, you have to understand, the media thought General Kelly, I keep wanting to call him John, and I catch myself, he's General Kelly. They've been thinking all this time that he's on their side, that he knows Trump's an absolute bozo, that Trump's an out-of-control idiot, and he's in there to keep this White House on the straight and narrow. And now they're finding he's out there defending Trump, and he's sounding like Trump. He's saying the same thing as Trump. And they are livid at General Kelly because they feel betrayed. They think Kelly and Mattis and Tillerson are in there to undermine Trump. And that's not what's happening here. And so they just took out after him. Here's the next one. This is even better.
I went to the dedication of the new FBI field office in Miami. And it was dedicated to two men who were killed in a firefight in Miami against drug traffickers. There were family members there. Some of the children that were there were only 3 or 4 years old when their dads were killed on that street in Miami-Dade. 3 of the men that survived the fight were there and gave rendition of how brave those men were and how they gave their lives. And a congresswoman stood up, and in the long tradition of empty barrels making the most noise, stood up there and all of that and talked about how she was instrumental in getting the funding for that building and how she took care of her constituents because she got the money, and she just called up President Obama, and on that phone call he gave the money, the $20 million to build the building. And she sat down, and we were stunned that she'd done it. Even for someone that is that empty a barrel, we were stunned. I still hope, as you write your stories, and I appeal to America, that let's not let this maybe last thing that's held sacred in our society, a young man, young woman going out and giving his or her life for our country. Let's try to somehow keep that sacred. But it eroded a great deal yesterday by the selfish behavior of a member of Congress.
And he's talking about Frederica Wilson, the sequined cowboy hat wearing Frederica Wilson. She is the one who hijacked the memorial at the FBI building to brag about the fact she got the money to build a building by calling Obama and then sat back down. And she got the money for her constituents and so forth. And he's calling her an empty barrel. He didn't mention her by name. That's who she was and who she is. And he's right on the money. But, you know, another point that he made, folks, revolves around this whole thing. It's what they signed up for. This is what makes these people special. He's exactly right. 1%, they volunteer for this. That's what separates them from all of us. They volunteer for it, and they know full well when they volunteer what's going to happen. At this point in our nation's history, they know that wars are being fought all over the world. They know they're going to combat when they sign up. That's the whole point here. That's why they are honored and revered. And the left and this Congress, nobody can get their arms around that. Kelly began his explanation yesterday to the media by saying, not there are too many of you in this room that actually know anybody in the military. And that's probably right on the money as well. Phone calls are coming up. Don't go away. And predictably, stupidly, and in terms of being a walking cliche, Frederica Wilson, the cowboy hat, the sequin cowboy hat wearing Democrat Congresswoman from Florida, has now accused General Kelly of being a racist for daring to criticize her and her behavior at the dedication of the FBI building in Miami-Dade. She said he can't do racism on me or some such thing.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
Stop telling lies on me. You can't be racist. Just stop telling lies on me. Folks, it's exactly what I told you yesterday. I went through this. They are imploding on that side of the aisle. You just don't see it characterized that way because the media is defending these people and promoting them. But in the eyes of the people that make this country work, it's the left, it's the Democrats, all of these, the media, they are imploding. Becoming unhinged and hysterical. It's great to have you back. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program, Open Line Friday. And the email address, elrushbo@eibnet.us. I'm going to get the phone calls right now. If I don't, I'll get too far behind here. We got some great people lined up who want to talk about a variety of things. And it's Open Line Friday. Always try to take more calls. And as I've said to you over and over, I get uncomfortable with people being on hold for so long. It's not possible in every 3-hour program to get everything that I want to talk about in. It's now becoming a daily truth or characteristic, and I'm not going to be able to get everything. And yesterday, I was out on the left coast, and the staff out there said, man, for a slow news day, you're making this slow news day. I think yesterday was a slow news day. Jeez. We haven't had a slow news day since the campaign began. I mean, these clowns may take August off, but the news isn't stopping. And that's because they're so dredged up with hatred, for Trump, that it's mind-boggling to see all of this as it manifests each and every day. So let's start here. We have Paul in Glen Rock, Pennsylvania. You're first. It's great to have you with us. Hello.
Well, thank you very much, Rush. Thank you and Snerdley for taking my call, and thank you for your service. I was fired up before I listened to General Kelly yesterday. I watched the whole news conference from the very beginning, and it was heartfelt. It was just awesome.
I had a couple people tell me yesterday that they had seen it live, and then they were watching replays of it on cable TV last night. They couldn't. It broke their hearts to watch this again. And it does have that impact on you.
Yeah, heartbreaking. That actually wasn't why I called. I called because I was originally fired up with W coming out and putting it into Trump when he kept silent for 8 years. He kept his yap shut for 8 years and wouldn't say a word. And Trump hasn't been in there 1 year. And I follow it. I know what's going on with the stock market and everything, and what he's trying to do and what he says he wants to do. And for him to do that is just, it's blown.
Well, tell me what you think he did. You're talking about George W. Bush, right? Tell me what
George W.
What did he do?
You know, with his speech.
Yeah, I know. I saw this. What did he do with it? What offended you about it or bothered you?
Just his innuendos of not saying his name, and I know who he was talking about. It was like, God help him, John McCain. I feel so bad for him that with what he's going through medically. Within a few days, when Barack Hussein Obama was sitting at the table and basically told him to get in the back of the bus and shut up, we won, and you never heard any more about him. And now look at him. It's got me tweaked.
Well, look, when it two things. When it comes to McCain, you kind of have to throw everything out. I mean, I do. Maybe some of you have a tougher time doing that. I throw it all out. McCain, let me just say it. He's never, ever going to forgive or get over Trump's comment that Trump doesn't admire military people who get captured. So in McCain's mind, he's got the rest of his life, however long it is, to pay Trump back for that. And every chance he gets, he's going to do it. And I just write that off as human nature as applied to Senator McCain. I mean, he relished walking into the Senate chamber and thumbing down Obamacare. He relished the reaction to it. The illness that Senator McCain is suffering, you just have to throw it out. I'm not saying give him a total pass. I'm just saying I understand it. I understand where Senator McCain's coming from. And especially with the comment that we heard earlier this week from Senator McCain, and we parsed this, and I went through it. It was quite telling. When McCain was speaking of this vaunted position in the world that the United States created for itself 75 years ago, post-World War II era, that we created the world order, and then we assumed leadership of that world order. And now all this talk of nationalism and punks that are talking this way is abrogating our responsibility. Senator McCain doesn't realize that position of leadership was thrown away the past 8 years. Obama threw that away. Obama resented every aspect of that arrangement, thought it was not our position to make it. We had no business leading the world because we were the problem in the world and went through all this. But Senator McCain's still living in the era where that's what the Washington establishment is and what it did and what it does. So his desire to make Trump pay is twofold. That comment that Trump made during the campaign and a couple other things. Now, as to George W. Bush and the speech yesterday, he didn't mention Trump's name. You're right. I'm a little, I guess I'm somewhat restrained on this because I owe the Bush family a lot. I mean, they've opened a lot of doors for me, and President Bush was as accommodating and nice to me and presented me opportunities that no other president has or probably ever will. And so, and in terms of just his existence as a human being, he's just a fine, he's a good guy. He's a great guy, fine man. And so this is the problem with getting to know these people. It's why I've always tried really not to get too close to all these people. It can't help but then affect commenting on them. That having been said, I can understand George W. Bush and his speechwriters. I mean, I think Mike Gerson wrote that speech, maybe Pete Weiner, and they are both the leaders of the Never Trump brigades, and they are both beside themselves over what they think has happened to the country because of Trump. And I'm not saying Bush doesn't agree with it because he said the words, but I would probably attach some meaning to it, since Gerson was his primary speechwriter, and Pete's a friend of mine too. Pete worked for Bill Bennett at Empower America, and he was one of the top lieutenants of Karl Rove in the White House during the Bush administration. And he also is a fine guy. We just have a very wide disagreement now about where the country is, where it's going, and conservatism's role in it, and all that. The thing about the Bush speech, though, that troubled me the most, I don't care what he says about Trump. I mean, because it's predictable. It's predictable that establishment people are going to hate Trump. He's the outsider. He can't be permitted to come in and shake things up and succeed. It's just, it won't fly. They're never going to be persuaded. The establishment types we're going to always be in battle with them. They're never going to acquiesce to any of this that's going on. They're never going to be persuaded to support it and join it. This is anathema to them. They also come from the position that McCain was talking about earlier in the week, that we have this vaunted New World Order that the United States established in the post-war period, that we have leadership of the world, and that's a tremendous responsibility, and we're abrogating it now with all this talk of American greatness and America putting America first and making America great. They think that conflicts with the New World Order of leading the world. And I strongly disagree. The thing about the speech that Bush made was the characterization of the people, the country today. Bigotry, white supremacy, racism, all these. You couldn't win an election if all you had voting for you was white supremacists. You don't have enough of those people probably to elect anybody much bigger office than dog catcher. And yet to suggest that this may be what the country is becoming just misses what's happening out there and what's going on. And it's not that difficult. People do not equate the idea of making America great and keeping it great with somehow threatening the world order. That, to me, American greatness, American leading from greatness, America self-confident in her superpower status, America confident in the mission for goodness and decency and justice is all the leadership you need. We don't need to capitulate and kowtow to anybody. We don't need to accept, a political agenda of a bunch of people that don't have our best interests at heart, which is most of the United Nations and most of the European Union. And all there is going on now is an effort to reassert the United States as founded for what it really is, the nation's lone superpower, the lone outpost for freedom and liberty, democracy, decency, morality, all of this. And there's an effort now to reestablish this as what America stands for and who America is, rather than an America that cooperates with allegations that America is the problem in the world. America is destroying the world because of climate change. You know, the establishment kind of lets that stuff roll off their back. That's just those little tin horns saying that. You can't take them seriously. Sorry, we do when we have American presidents who side with the tin horns. I'm going to tell you this story again. This is how, and it's an ongoing learning process for me. Folks, I am still learning about this club, the establishment. Every day is well, maybe not every day, but multiple times a week, I actually learn something about this club. Who's in it, who's not in it, how you get in it, how you stay in it, what happens to you to get tossed out of it. Now, I want to take you back, particularly the last 4 years, George Bush's second term. This man was repeatedly lied about. Combined efforts of the Democrat Party and the American media literally set out to destroy the presidency of George W. Bush. Now, it had its roots in the Florida 2000 recount aftermath, where they told themselves the election was stolen from them. So Bush was an illegitimate president from the get-go. Bush was never accorded the respect of genuinely elected. He was always a cheater or the beneficiary of cheating. He was, 2 weeks after 9/11, the assault on Bush and his administration began, and they never fought back against it. And it crystallized in the second 4 years, the second term, where they literally tried to undermine the war on terror and the war in Iraq, and they literally sought defeat of the United States. And the Democrats were routinely accusing the American military of terrorist acts, terrorizing and raping Iraqi mothers. John Kerry, John Murtha, accusing the U.S. military, U.S. Marines of this kind of behavior. David Petraeus, who's in the club, by the way, as a high-ranking member of the Washington staff, even after everything that's happened, Petraeus is still one of the ranking members. They accuse him of lying before a congressional committee before he even says a word, and Hillary's out there calling him Betraeus. And it was all to discredit what he was going to announce as the latest military strategy to win in Iraq, the surge. Well, during all this, there was a State of the Union speech. And Bush was booed and treated shabbily during the speech and before the speech. And one of the ringleaders of the opposition was Russ Feingold, a Democrat senator from Wisconsin. And it was vicious. It was vicious every day. Bush's attitude about it was, hey, it's just politics. It's no big deal. This is just what happens. He never took any of it personally, while all of his supporters were, and all of his supporters, me included, were livid that this was happening, and there wasn't any pushback, and that there wasn't any anger about it, and there wasn't any effort to stop it, because as Bush was attacked and assaulted, so were all of us who voted for him, and there was no pushback to any of it. And it was destructive. It was hurting the country. It was hurting the military. It was designed to. The Democrats were trying to divide everybody in order to win back the White House in 2008. They were ticked off that Lurch had lost it in 2004. So anyway, after that State of the Union speech, the cameras remained rolling as Bush exited the House chamber, and he's in the area immediately outside, and I see Feingold walk up to him. And they start chatting like the best of friends. And Feingold asks Bush to pose for a picture with him. Bush dutifully stops and poses, puts his arm around him, shakes his hand, gives him a fist bump. They're the best of buddies. Feingold has been trying to destroy Bush for weeks, 4 months prior to this. But yet, in a moment which was not ostensibly televised, and that told me everything. These are two guys in the establishment and both play in their roles. Neither of them took it seriously, and neither took it personally. And yet we all were. All of us were. And that's something about the club. The people in the club, they know their rules, and the Republicans apparently are supposed to be satisfied with second-tier status. occasionally winning, but when they do, they're going to be destroyed. Apparently that's fine. And Trump's upsetting all of this, and it's got everybody so out of whack they don't know how to deal with it. Because the club has its rules, unwritten, unstated, and they've been totally upended. I have to take a break. We'll be back here in just a second. Fort Collins, Colorado, home of Dan's Bake Sale. This is Rick. Great to have you, sir. What's up?
I am so hurt that Kaepernick and the MSM progressive cabal has culturally appropriated the great national tradition of NFL leisure time.
That's exactly what has happened. They have hijacked the National Football League, and they are in the process now of politicizing it according to the Black Lives Matter political agenda.
And this is our safe space. We've never had politics here. It's a uniquely American tradition going back for generations, and rituals that we have practiced which are now being raped by these social justice warriors. They don't understand it. They don't appreciate our cultural identity.
Oh, I know what you mean, but they're threatened by it. They understand it enough to know that is patriotic, it celebrates and honors the military, it's got toxic masculinity, and it is free of politics, and therefore it must be taken over. They know full well what it means. That's right, my friends, a man, a legend, a way of life on the ever-expanding EIB network. Now, quickly, I want to go back to our last caller. He did a marvelous job. He had less than a minute and didn't know it and said everything he wanted to say. And I was not unilaterally completely disagreeing. His point was that these people that are corrupting the NFL don't know. They don't know anything about it. They don't know anything about the football culture. They don't know anything about what it takes to play the game, what you go through to get there to play the game. And on that, he's exactly right. You basically have a bunch of people that have literally heretofore shown no interest in it whatsoever. And about that, he's totally right. But my point is they know exactly what they're doing. The NFL threatens them precisely because it's outside their control. It's outside, and up to now, it's been outside their ability to infiltrate, if you will. I mean, look at the ownership structure and look at the executive structure of the NFL. The usual open doors for a Black Lives Matter or Southern Poverty Law Center, or take your pick of any left-wing group to get in there and corrupt it, have been shut off. And it represents things which threaten them. You understand, the left is not a bunch of people that can peacefully coexist with people that disagree with them. You disagree, or if you're in opposition, you have to be destroyed. You have to be shut down. You have to be eliminated one way or the other. They do not tolerate any disagreement or opposition. They're threatened by it. The left, remember, is totalitarian and authoritarian. They're not democratic. And they cannot tolerate people being permitted to make up their mind which side of any issue they agree with. And so the NFL is the most popular sport in the country. It's the wealthiest sport in the country. As such, it is a humongous target, and that's all they need to know. Then they look at who loves it, and they hate the people that love the NFL. To the left, the people that love the NFL are the same people that love NASCAR. They're a bunch of deliverance types. They're Southern, they're hayseed, they're hicks, they're gross, they're not sophisticated. They engage in all these activities the left finds reprehensible. You won't find any metrosexuals in the bunch, for example. You won't find any transgenders in the bunch. There's just blatant toxic masculinity. There is rugged individualism confined in a team sport. There are routine acknowledgments of the military. Gigantic American flags are on display before every game. That can't stand. And I'm not exaggerating, and I don't want you to think that I am. All of the things I'm telling you are things that genuinely scare them and offend them and represent things they have to destroy or to diminish. because those things threaten them and their existence, which is why they take over political party, take over universities, they take over Hollywood. There is no other way of thinking. There is no tolerance for other ways of thinking. Now, some in this group don't want to totally destroy the NFL. They want to keep it just big enough to fleece, shake down, what have you. Others on the left want to totally obliterate it because it represents a significant portion of America that will never, ever cower and cave to what they believe, except now the league is. Now the league is beginning to cower and cave. The league is allowing itself to become corrupted. And the league and the game have been hijacked. It's the players that have hijacked the game in the process of it. And this is what has fans so upset. Fans of professional sports, young and old, have an instinctive admiration for the people who play. And the greater the player, the greater the fandom. It's just human nature. And one of the fastest ways I have found to destroy that putting of people on a pedestal, that's part of loving the game, is when the players are exposed as not being worthy of that kind of admiration. That's the first little dink in the armor. When the fans start thinking the players really aren't that special, and then when that begins to cascade, then the love affair begins to, shall we say, water down and begins to wane. And that's what we're seeing happen, right? It's been happening for a long time. I tell you, folks, I actually think that this all began long ago. And this is not a wish to turn back the clock, to go back to an earlier time. I'm just going to make an observation. And it's not just at social media, but rather the prevalence of so much media before, during, and after each game takes so much of the mystique away that there's nothing much left to quote-unquote dream about or imagine. With so much media coverage, every question you have now, or every speculation, everything that you're curious about now has an answer. And most of them let you down. They don't lift you up. I remember when I was a kid, and I'm just using this as a comparative illustration, not a request to turn back the clock. When I was a kid growing up, there was one baseball game a week on television, Saturday afternoon. And since CBS owned the Yankees, it was always the Yankees. If those of us living in Missouri who loved the St. Louis Cardinals, we had to go to St. Louis. You had to go to the stadium to watch them. Occasionally the Cardinals would be on TV. But if you didn't live in St. Louis, you couldn't get TV stations from St. Louis over the air. You never saw your team unless they happened to make a national game. And that just added to the mystique. And when you got to the stadium to actually see the team, it was like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually see your team and the people playing it. It wasn't. Now it's no big deal either way to see them. It's no big deal to see them on TV. No big deal to see them at the stadium. It's just the mystique is gone, and now the media is in the locker room before the game, on the field during the game, on the field after the game, in the locker room after the game, in the players' front yards during the week. There's no mystique left. And there's no changing it. Don't misunderstand me. And I think with whatever happened that began to erode, and I say mystique, there may be a better word for it, but as the mystique and as the questions that you always had but you never had the answers to, once those questions began to have answers, curiosity lessened. It just wasn't as much. And whatever propelled from curiosity stopped being propelled. Now, I know that attendance has skyrocketed with all this media coverage and presence. I get all that. Don't misunderstand. I'm talking about fan attitudes. And now with as much as is known about the people that play and own and run the game, it's just less special. It still is the NFL, or it's still the Major League Baseball, but with players tweeting and all of this, it's there's less of the idea that what they do is special and hard to watch and unique and special to see, to now being everywhere. And so since it's everywhere, it doesn't take much to diminish it. So when these protests began and you start having players openly disrespecting the symbols of the country, there's only one way that's going to be interpreted. And it's not anti-Trump, and it's not anti-police, and it's not anti-this. It's going to be interpreted as what it is, disrespect for the flag. I'm telling you, you take that out of this, you add that to this, and bye-bye mystique and hello anger. And it's exactly what's happening here. And it's all by design. It's all designed to get you to not want to watch this stuff anymore. It's all designed to get you to lose respect for it. As far as the left is concerned, there's nothing better that could have happened than for the people that play the game to start on the flag. From their standpoint, this is a home run. And that's what makes me sad about it. Let me ask you this little pop quiz. Don't know the answer here for you. But if these protests ended this Sunday, if from now on every player stood, there wasn't one player that took a knee, there wasn't one player that linked arms, there wasn't one player with a raised fist, there was nothing but respect, are you going to forget all of this? And is the game going to once again be what it once was? So you're saying there's no way this can be rectified? You don't know, but not this season. Well, the protests aren't going to stop, but I was just saying, if they did, if the commissioner this week had come out and said, we have ordered our players, we've had meetings and we have ordered our players, they work for us, they are going to stand during the anthem, would that have affected the way you view the league? Too late. Too late. Jeannie said, okay, be back in a second. Don't go away. So Obama's back on the campaign trail, stump speeching for Democrat candidates for whatever. It was guarantees those candidates are going to lose, by the way. But he said something that, this typifies to me the divide that we have in the country. Obama's saying that instead of politics reflecting our values, politics is now intruding or corrupting or whatever our communities. There it is again, our communities. Instead of politics reflecting our values. Now, the arrogance of that, let me tell you what Obama means by that. He means that when he was president and his administration was running the show, every bit of partisan politics they did was exactly what everybody wanted, and it simply reflected the values of our culture. When it didn't. This is why Trump is president and Hillary isn't. What Obama and the Democrats represented was not our values. They were attacking and trying to transform basic, time-honored American traditions and institutions. And so now when the Democrats are on the losing side of things, Obama comes out and says that politics is corrupting our communities. The corruption that's gone on here is directly owned by the Democrat Party, the American left, and the media. They are the agents of the corruption, and they're corrupting everything they get their hands on. But they arrogantly believe that what they think represents American values, and therefore they are doing nothing more but representing American values. When they are not the majority of thinking in this country, they have to move in and corrupt and take over institutions and then be intolerant of any opposition. And they do this under the guise of reflecting popular values. Obama used that phrase time and time again. This is not who we are. This is not our value. He said that a lot during his administration, but I thought his administration was only reflecting American values. What a crock. But now politics is infecting our communities. Here is Carrie in Chesapeake, Virginia. Great to have you with us. Welcome to the EIB Network.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You bet.
I'm concerned about the future of our children, and I certainly appreciate what I think is your concern, too, through your Rush Revere books. But I think we're sending mixed messages to our children. I mean, we teach them in elementary school and middle school, no bullying, no fighting, no violence, embrace everyone, tolerance, respect. But yet somehow when they get to college, they're encouraged to bully if it's outside of an opinion, or use violence by tearing up things and damaging property. I mean, I don't think that there are Republicans or Democrats anymore. I think it's progressives and conservatives. And if you're a conservative and you have an opinion, you have groups like Antifa who get up in your face and threaten. And to me, it's such a mixed message. And I'm not going to pin it on Obama. But he did say that he wanted to fundamentally change this country.
Why won't you blame Obama? He's the guy that said, get in their face. He's the guy that said, if they bring a knife to a fight, we bring a gun. Why don't you want to include him in it?
Because I think it's both sides. I think it's Washington, D.C. in general. I think there were buzzwords that are always used to stand up and resist and rise up. However, when you can't control people, you can't control everyone. So if a rogue group goes and destroys something or harms somebody, then they act all astonished that it was a rogue person. However, it's encouraged. I mean, and we also tell our children, well, anybody can be president of the United States. Well, that's not true either. You can only be president if you play the right game. So I think that, I mean, I have two boys. Both of them were bullied tremendously through middle school, and one of them still in high school. And I had to tell them, you can't defend yourself. You can't fight back. If you do, you're suspended. But yet when they get to college, it's a whole different game plan, you know? And I think Pandora's box has been open with all of it. And I think once Pandora's box is open with all of this resist, disrespect, you can't close it again. And I think what's happening is this country has been changed. And it's a wild, wild west. And if you oppose, you are crucified for almost. I mean, what happens to the progressives when the younger people, for instance, don't get their promises such as, you know, free this or free that, free college, and then they turn on the progressives? Well, I mean, there has to be some sort of...
Well, I think, look, I wish I could respond to you right now. I can't because I'm literally out of time. But I will talk about this when we get back. I appreciate the call. Thank you, El Mucho. She had a very interesting point about raising kids not to be bullies, and then when they get to college, turning them into bullies. And she said it's not Republican, Democrat, it's progressive versus liberal. And that's right. But the bully aspect, interesting to me. We'll tackle that and much more, too, when we get back. Welcome back. Great to have you. It's Rush Limbaugh. And it is the Excellence in Broadcasting Network on Friday.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
Open Line Friday. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. 800-282-2882. One big, exciting, and busy broadcast hour remains. And as always, it's unpredictable. We don't know where it's going. You know, I want to tell you a news story that you haven't heard and that you will not hear. I don't remember even how, but I referenced transgenders. Oh, it was the Playboy. I have never seen a crestfallen face like I saw Wendy's face crestfall when I said that the Playboy Playmate of the Month is actually a transgendered guy. Here's the story. You didn't know that? The Playboy Playmate of the Month is a man, transgendered to female. I didn't see it. I did see I don't know if it's a centerfold. I didn't see the magazine. I saw the still shots that are pulled from the magazine. I don't know if it's a centerfold, but yeah, it is that position in the magazine. Yeah, that's not nude. If that's what you're asking me, they couldn't do that. I mean, that would blow the whole thing sky high if it did a nude. Anyway, here's the story. It's out of Wyoming, and it seems like the only place I've seen this is the UK Daily Mail. Here's the headline. Transgender woman convicted of sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl in women's bathroom. Michelle Martinez, known as Miguel Martinez before identifying as a female, found guilty. She took a 10-year-old girl to a bathroom where she touched her breasts and genitalia. Nurses then found evidence of the shocking abuse, which included penetration. Martinez faces 70 years in jail for first and second degree sexual abuse of a minor. UK Daily Mail. I don't think you're going to see it anywhere else. Harvard has rescinded a medal that it gave to Harvey Weinstein. This is what happens when the leftists give each other awards. You have to take so many of them away. Harvard rescinding a medal it gave to Weinstein in 2014 for his contributions to African-American culture. Are you kidding? Harvey Weinstein? The school's Hutchins Center for African and African-American Research decided to revoke the W.E.B. Du Bois Medal, or Dubois, on Tuesday in light of allegations of sexual abuse against the movie mogul. Speaking of Harvey is ostensibly at a sex addict rehab center in Arizona. And page 6 in the New York Post today, Harvey Weinstein doesn't seem to be taking sex rehab seriously. He's already being belligerent. He's barking into his banned cell phone. He's remaining in denial about his alleged sex attacks, insisting each and every one was consensual. The movie mogul, who volunteered to go to rehab after a wave of allegations, isn't exactly in his element in therapy, falling asleep in sessions or talking on his phone. He was reported to be in an inpatient facility, but the source says he's actually being treated at an intensive outpatient facility, which allows him to spend nights at a hotel. The clinic offers one-on-one counseling and group. Harvey can't go to group. There is no way, even if he were taking it seriously, he can't go to group. He's dealing with possible crimes. He can't go in there and start talking about this to strangers. I mean, they can't promise him immunity in there. So whatever they design for him, what if he even really wanted to do all this? He can't go to group. So whatever therapy has to be one-on-one. But I think the reason it isn't taking is that I don't think Harvey's a sex addict. He's just a bully. He's a predator and a bully. That's my take. Just trust me on this. I don't believe that sex addiction is Harvey's problem, and I know some people don't even think it actually is a thing. It's just something that's been concocted for guys to say they're sick as an excuse for philandering and cheating on their wives. Did you see this? This is hilarious. North Korean generals This is an NBC News report. North Korean generals love Morning Joe on MSNBC. They watch it every day. A North Korean lieutenant colonel said that the North Korean regime watches Morning Joe because they believe Trump is mentally ill, as that show believes Trump is mentally ill. So they have found some compatriots in Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski and whoever else is on that show. And the Morning Joe crowd, I'm sure they're flattered. I'm sure they are honored. I want to go back to General Kelly. I want to play soundbite 8 again and some follow-up to this. The woman as our last caller. You know, she had a couple of good points, that there aren't any Republicans or Democrats anymore. It's just progressives versus conservatives, with Washington being the establishment type where all the attacks generally on tradition and morality are coming from. But her primary point was that we are sending confusing messages to our young people, that when they are young and in kindergarten, grade school, high school, middle school, whatever, that we teach them not to bully. Do not bully, it's a bad thing. And yet, when these same kids get to college, they're told bullying and violence is called for if somebody says something you disagree with. It's okay to beat them up. And she said, this is sending mixed signals and we're confusing people. Now, I didn't want to interrupt her. She was on a roll and our time was dwindling away. So I wanted her to be able to say as much as she could in the time that she had left. And she did a bang-up job not knowing how much time she had left. We have a couple of callers today who have really exercised an innate talent for understanding broadcast timing constraints. At any rate, if I had stopped to interject with her about the bullying, I would have said to her that the people you claim are bullying on college campus, Antifa she mentioned, Black Lives Matter, they don't think they're bullying. In their mind, they are defending. And they're defending against evil. And therefore, they are entitled to do anything. They can take whatever step necessary to stop evil. And that's what they've been trained. The mixed messages or the confused messages that we're sending are indeed partisan. And they are indeed ideological. And people on the left believe that they are entitled and that whatever they think and whatever they are is just what is. It's natural, and anything to the contrary is evil and must be destroyed, must be stamped out. They don't look at it as bullying at all. In fact, they would preach against bullying. They would say, for example, that the people they beat up are bullying them by disagreeing with them. And if you want to go even deeper, you might even suggest that this education with young people to not bully, don't be mean, is to set them up to be walked all over later in their life. And I wouldn't put that past the forward and long-term thinking of leftist social planners in the least. Create a bunch of wusses, pansies who believe it's not right to fight back or be defensive in any way, and to set themselves up to be walked all over and be conditioned to be simply acquiescent. Maybe a stretch, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody were to learn that that's in some manual somewhere. Now back to General Kelly, because there's some aftermath for this, but I want to replay one soundbite because of the second half of this.
I was stunned when I came to work yesterday morning and brokenhearted at what I saw a member of Congress doing. A member of Congress who listened in on a phone call from the President of the United States to a young wife, and in his way tried to express that opinion that he's a brave man, a fallen hero. He knew what he was getting himself into because he enlisted. There's no reason to enlist. He enlisted. And he was where he wanted to be exactly where he wanted to be with exactly the people he wanted to be with when his life was taken. That was the message. It stuns me that a member of Congress would have listened in on that conversation. Absolutely stuns me. And I thought at least that was sacred. You know, when I was a kid growing up, a lot of things were sacred in our country. Women were sacred and looked upon with great honor. That's obviously not the case anymore, as we see from recent cases. Life, the dignity of life, is sacred. That's gone. Religion, that seems to be gone as well. Gold Star families, I think that left in the convention over the summer. I just thought the selfless devotion that brings a man or woman to die on the battlefield, I just thought that that might be sacred.
Now, I happen to know exactly what he's talking about and what he means here. And he's essentially detailing all of these formerly, well, he refers to them as sacred. I think they're time-honored American values and how they have been corrupted and how it disappoints him. But the last domino to fall is he thought that American men and women who volunteer, who are one of the 1%, who volunteered, and they volunteer in this time frame, they know exactly where they're going to end up more often than not. They're going to end up on a battlefield. They're going to end up in combat, and they still do it. And their sacrifice, he's always believed, is sacred. Now, even that's being politicized. Gold Star families are being politicized. Everything is being corrupted in the process. He's right on the money of this. He himself's a Gold Star father. Father to Marines, United States Marine Corps General, Commander, United States Southern Command, General of the Multinational Force West in Iraq, Commander, Marine Forces Reserve, and Marine Forces North, Commander of the U.S. Southern Command, Secretary of Homeland Security, White House Chief of Staff, 2 meritorious service awards. Now, the choice for me, that guy or a loud, obnoxious, attention-seeking, race-baiting, leftist congresswoman in a rhinestone-covered cowboy hat? The left is beside itself. They're not used to this. Republicans don't fight back. And remember now, this is crucial for you to keep this in perspective. The left thinks that General Kelly is on their side, or was. To them, General Kelly is in the establishment. He's right there with General Mattis. He's right up there with Petraeus. He's right there with Tillerson. These guys are guarding against Trump losing his mind. These are the guys that are making sure Trump doesn't go insane. These are the guys making sure Trump's orders are not implemented. For this guy to come out and say the things he said yesterday, they are seething with rage. They think they've been buffaloed and fooled. They thought Kelly was one of them. They thought Kelly was sympathetic to their complaints about Trump. And here comes Kelly not only defending Trump, but defending everything that Trump stands for, and especially defining why Trump won. And so we have this headline at Newsbusters. Nitwit John Kelly is an odious coward making bizarre, dishonest, racist remarks. That is a headline describing how CNN dealt with General Kelly yesterday. CNN political commentator Simone Sanders played the race card, insinuating racism in Kelly's discussion about fallen service members and response to Democrat Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. Racism? See, you can't criticize a Democrat member of Congress who happens to be black. If you do, you are a racist. Just like you couldn't criticize President Obama's policies. That makes you racist. So this CNN commentator, Simone Sanders, said they found a way to make this about a black woman doing something wrong. Miss me with this ass-backwards attempt to vindicate Trump. CNN national correspondent, former Obama regime official Jim Sciutto displayed his displeasure with Kelly. He tweeted, with due respect, on what basis do Generals Kelly and Mattis criticize the media for asking how and why 4 U.S. soldiers were killed in action? That's not what you guys were doing. You were asserting Trump doesn't care about it. You were trying to make political hay out of the fact that Trump doesn't care, that Trump doesn't have empathy, that Trump doesn't call any of these people, and when he does, he makes a fool of himself. I didn't hear Kelly criticize the media for asking about the soldiers killed in action. I also missed the part where CNN showed any interest in why 4 Americans were killed in Benghazi. They seemed to not be able to get Niger out of their heads, but when it came to Benghazi, it was that video, and they tried to forget it. A writer for GQ, Devin Gordon, was outraged that anyone would criticize the media, particularly General Kelly. And then we have grab soundbite number 10. This is Frederica Wilson, the empty barrel that he referred to yesterday in Miami on WSVN TV.
You mean to tell me that I have become so important that the White House is following me and my words? This is amazing. It's amazing. That is absolutely phenomenal. I have to tell my kids that I'm a rock star now.
And this morning, they loved her so much after that, they went out at CNN. They had her on their show this morning with Allison Camerata, who said, I think his point that was that empty barrels make the most noise, Congresswoman.
That's a racist term, too. I'm thinking about that when we looked it up in the dictionary because I had never heard of an empty barrel.
Right, so it had to be racist. It just had to be. And finally, this last one again, CNN.
She was distraught that he kept saying, my guy, your guy, not your husband, your guy. She said he didn't even know LaDavid's name. So that was the most painful part. The only reason I came on this morning was to say that I do not appreciate someone lying on me. If you lie on me, I'm going to answer because I'm not going to let you get away with it.
I didn't know Kelly went down to lay on her out there. I didn't see that. All right, let's get back to the phones. We still haven't got the Fusion GPS story, and that's worth some time. But here's Matthew in Eagle Mountain, what? Hello. Utah. Great to have you, Matthew. Welcome to the program. Oh, wait, he's 12 years old. I just saw he's 12. Matthew, welcome to our program. Great to have you here, son.
Nice to see you. I just want to congratulate you on all the accomplishments you made on your book series. I am now reading the last one. I barely have any time to read it, but I remember in 6th grade, I did 2 book reports about your books.
You are congratulating me on the accomplishments. That I can't tell you how much that means to me. Because what the accomplishment is that people like you liked these books. That's the accomplishment.
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate you on that.
Well, that is so nice of you. You're not reading the last one, did you say?
Yes, the presidency.
And this is, Matthew, we're getting a lot of comments lately from people like you, people your age, telling us how much they love these books, and it's exciting every time we hear it. And I'm so gratified that you're enjoying them and getting something out of it. And I'm so moved that you want to congratulate me on the accomplishment of it. That's just incredible. I tell you what, can you hang on? We need to get an address for you because we'd like to send you a whole package of items from the Rush Revere team that will accompany the books that you have. If you would hang on, don't go away. This is, I'm speechless. And we are back. Half my brain tied behind my back, always, to make sure it's fair here with anybody who happens to call. The White House has released, is it the White House or was it I'm not sure who's really, it's the widow of a Army Staff Sergeant has released a recording of the call the President made to her to offer condolences for the loss of her husband who was serving in Afghanistan. Natasha Allenker, Natasha de Allenker, the widow of Army Staff Sergeant Mark de Allenker, released a video recording made on April 12th this year when President Trump called her to offer condolences. Now, this call, by the way, has been mischaracterized in the media as Trump was flippant and didn't seem sincere. And folks, they're just making all of this stuff up. They literally are just lying about all it's. I'm still incredulous about it all. They just continue lying. And so the release of the audio, she's African American, and you'll hear Trump couldn't be nicer. The woman appreciates it. And this phone call with the woman, the Wilson family, that the congresswoman was in the car listening. This whole thing now is beginning to sound like a typical left-wing project or a setup. Here is the audio of the call Trump made to this widow back in April.
I am so sorry to hear about the whole situation. What a horrible thing, except that he's an unbelievable hero. And, all of the people that served with him are saying how incredible he was. Yes, sir. And just an amazing guy. He's a great hero.
I want to thank you, President Trump. Those words are very kind. He was an amazing man, an amazing husband, and an amazing soldier. And I couldn't be more proud of my husband.
And that's what we have, but the president continued to talk to her and told her that he wanted to meet her, that she's in Washington, come by the White House, that he'd like to have her and host her in the Oval Office. It was perfectly fine. It was empathetic. It was sensitive. And they're out there telling these stories, and this guy buffoon doesn't know how to act on these kind of calls, doesn't have any empathy, doesn't really care. And it's all rooted now, folks. All of this is now rooted in the latest effort to get rid of Trump, and that is he's unfit for office, which is the first thing they started with Hillary Clinton after she lost. Actually, it was a part of her campaign. They tried with this Russia collusion business. Oh, have you heard the latest about this? The current CIA director, Mike Pompeo, went out there and said that whatever Russian collusion or Russian involvement was, there was no effect on the outcome of the election. And the media has gone berserk. The media was livid. Wolf Blitzer at CNN was livid. And so somebody at the CIA put out a statement correcting Pompeo. So CNN went and got James Woolsey, who is a former CIA director, and they're pounding this guy. What do you make of the CIA retracting the statement made by the director? And Woolsey said, well, that's not what has happened here. All the director said was that whatever the Russians did, it didn't affect the outcome of the election. And Wolf Blitzer is just into paralyzed, stunned silence because they thought they had Pompeo now. Pompeo goes out and says whatever their involvement was, if any, it didn't affect the outcome of the election. And this they have been living with. They've been trying to create this idea that Trump stole the election with the Russians, and these idiots from Wolf Blitzer on down, every one of these idiots, these brain-dead idiots in the media, I guess, have talked themselves into it being true. They really believe. I think they've been so absorbed in this for so long that they really believe it. So now the existing CIA director, current CIA director, says it didn't affect the outcome of the election, and somebody at the CIA and Obama in bed has to put out a statement correcting Pompeo. So Woolsey goes out and says, no, they didn't correct anything Pompeo said. All Pompeo said was whatever Russia did didn't affect the outcome. And it didn't. But these people, these lunatics, are so invested in this lie that they thought they had evidence finally that the CIA knew and the Trump CIA director was being embarrassed and corrected against or corrected for. Anyway, now they're back on Trump is unfit. Now Trump is unempathetic. Now Trump is a barbarian. He doesn't know how to behave in this office. They've just got nothing, and they talk themselves into these things. And so the White House, or the widow, releases this phone call that disproves every allegation they're trying to make about Trump. Here is David in Charlotte, North Carolina. You're next, sir. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Rush. It's an honor to talk to you.
Thank you, sir, very much.
I have a 9-year-old son, and my wife and I have him in a private school because we don't want to, indoctrinate him into the public school failing system and whatnot. So we sacrificed to do that. And now, this week we had a conversation in Cub Scouts. He's in the Boy Scouts of America, and they're considering bringing girls into the Boy Scouts of America system. And my initial reaction was that's some left-wing activism trying to get at our children another direction. And I'm hoping that I'm wrong and that it's actually just we have siblings, let them come play too. But what is your feel on that?
When I first heard this, what I think has happened and I don't know the specifics, and I don't know the people involved here, so you have to allow that I could be dead wrong about this. But I think in a general sense, what's happening is that the left is using the power of the media to pressure and bully a bunch of heretofore traditional American or conservative organizations. And I think it's working. And I think when I saw that the Boy Scouts are going to admit girls, remember what came first. The Boy Scouts, this is the Cub Scouts, but the Boy Scouts had to admit gays, and the Boy Scouts had to separate their associations with churches, and the Boy Scouts, because all this was discriminatory, and it was racist, and it was anti-gay, and they just buckled. Either that, or the leadership of these groups have been taken over by leftists, which is also a possibility. The right. Cub Scouts being forced to admit girls, was it Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts or both?
I believe it's definitely going to be in the Cub Scouts, and I think it's going to be both from what the research I'm doing.
When I saw that, it to me it just reeked of somebody buckling to pressure that the Cub Scouts is a discriminatory organization because it only allows boys. And this is the left succeeds with a lot of their mission this way by bullying people. If people don't want to be thought of as sexist, and they don't want to be thought of as racists, and they don't want to be thought of as bigots, and so they go out of their way to prove that they're not. Hey, look at me. Hey, look at us. We're going to let girls join the Boy Scouts and the Cub Scouts now. Now, the reaction, well, what about the Girl Scouts then? What are they supposed to do now?
Right.
Are they going to admit boys? That'll be a fat chance. Not until Harvey Weinstein's a troop leader will that happen.
Exactly. Trouble.
I wonder if I'll be condemned for that comment. Well, is your son nervous about this?
Well, he didn't know what to think about it. One of the other parents who has a daughter asked the kids when the den leader had stepped out. So I caught wind of that, and he didn't know what to think. Another boy in the troop said that he didn't want girls there. But as a parent, I'm the one that's concerned, because we don't have in the public school because we don't want that indoctrination. And this is just another avenue that they can use to gender.
I understand your sensitivity to that because on the surface it appears like that may be a factor. I was a Cub Scout once, but I've forgotten the age. What is 7, 8 years old? 9 years old? Is that?
Yeah, he's 9 now, and he's in the last stage of the Cub Scout before it's
now, I'm not trying to pry here, but your son, who's 9, is a Cub Scout. Does he like being around girls, or is he at that stage where I don't want the girls here? I don't want the girls.
No, he plays with girls in his class, and he doesn't have a problem with it yet. So.
Okay, all right. Well, some boys at that age don't want anything to do with the girls. They haven't yet matured and seen the light. It's just girls. No, I don't want Barbie dolls hanging around.
Right.
It'll change.
My son's pretty well balanced. He reads 2 grade levels above his grade, and he's pretty sharp tech. So.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could offer you more definitive on this, but I frankly haven't seen any more on it than the original story was. That I don't even remember if it's Cub or Boy Scouts. think you're right. It was Cub Scouts admitting girls. And I just had to, chalk it up to somebody buckling to pressure. Although I didn't know that there was any pressure being exerted on the Cub Scouts to admit girls. Maybe that happened below the radar. I don't know. But to me, it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. And the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts are not discriminatory. See, that's the claim. Well, if you have a club of nothing but boys, what are you saying to our young girls? You're saying you're not good enough. You're saying we don't want you. You're saying you're unwanted. We can't have that. And so people would buckle to that kind of pressure. That's, if I may extrapolate, that's another reason why Trump is never going to be abandoned. He does not buckle to this kind of stuff. And Kelly didn't either. You don't see Republicans standing up to these people. You tell me another Republican would stand up and call that wacko Congresswoman an open barrel and send her to the Urban Dictionary looking for the definition. Didn't even know what it was. She never heard the term. Usual occurrence is that somebody on the left acts outraged and the Republicans immediately, no, we're sorry. No, we didn't mean no. And these people in the Trump regime, they're just standing right up to it. They're not buckling to any of it, or not much that we know of anyway. Okay, back to the phones. Squeeze one more in here. This is Denny in Nemo, South Dakota. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to talk with you. My question is concerning the NFL players that are protesting against the flag. They say that they are protesting against police brutality in their communities. My question would be on their criminal histories. A person to be able to play in the NFL does not have to be a Bastille of moral turpitude, just very extremely talented as far as physically goes. How many of these guys have been arrested by law enforcement agencies in the course of their life?
Well, you know what? That's actually an interesting question, and you're asking if that might impact the protest that they're having. The fact that this might be personal. Look, I know of, just off the top of my head here, I can name 4 for you who have. But it is an interesting question. But they're going back and forth on why they're protesting. At first, it was in support of Kaepernick, which was anti-flag, anti-cops, Now they're saying no, it's not against the flag. Now they're saying it is the cops and the stuff going on in their communities. But that's an interesting question, folks. I'll save the Fusion GPS stuff for Monday.